Ladies and gentlemen, listen carefully, because this might be one of the most important realizations you'll ever have. Many people believe that as they age, their family will be their ultimate support. Their children, their relatives, people they've sacrificed for will step up and take care of them. But let me tell you something unsettling. That's not guaranteed. In fact, in many cases, it won't happen at all. Why? Because life is harsh, because people, even those closest to you, are burdened with their own struggles, and because the only person truly responsible for you is you. If you don't take care of your body, it will betray you. This is not a possibility. It is a certainty. People have this naive belief that aging alone is what makes you weak, that the passing of time is responsible for the deterioration of your body. That's not the whole truth. Aging is inevitable, yes, but how you age is largely within your control. People who neglect their bodies in their younger years often end up in a state of physical ruin by the time they turn 60, and at that point, the damage is difficult to undo. Your body is your most fundamental tool for navigating the world. It is the foundation upon which everything else rests. When you lose your strength, your mobility, and your vitality, your independence vanishes along with it. Suddenly, simple tasks become monumental challenges. Climbing a flight of stairs feels like an expedition. Carrying groceries becomes a burden. Getting out of bed in the morning is no longer just waking up. It's a struggle. And this decline doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, silently, over years of neglect, until one day you realize that the person staring back at you in the mirror is not someone who is truly living, but merely enduring. Let's be clear about something. When you lose your health, you lose your choices. You become a prisoner in your own body. You no longer have the freedom to go where you want, to do what you want, to engage with the world in a meaningful way. Instead, you become dependent on others, on doctors, on caretakers, on family members who may not always be able or willing to help you. And that dependence creates a deep sense of helplessness. It's one thing to ask for help when you truly need it, but it's another thing entirely to become a burden. And whether people admit it or not, those who become burdensome are often treated with quiet resentment rather than care. The key to avoiding this fate is to take full responsibility for your physical well-being. No one is coming to save you. No one will magically grant you strength and vitality in your later years if you have spent decades abusing your body. You have to make the investment now, wherever you are in life, whatever age you are. If you're 30, start today. If you're 50, start today. And if you're already past 60, start today. Because no matter what condition you are in, improvement is always possible. Exercise is non-negotiable. You must train your body to remain functional, and no, this does not mean you need to become a bodybuilder or an endurance athlete, but it does mean that you need to maintain strength, flexibility, and mobility. You need to be able to stand up without assistance. You need to be able to walk long distances without exhaustion. You need to be able to move without pain dictating every step you take. The human body is remarkably adaptable, but it requires stimulus. If you do not challenge your muscles, they will weaken. If you do not move your joints, they will stiffen. If you do not push your cardiovascular system, it will deteriorate. The problem is that most people don't realize how much control they actually have. They think getting weaker is just part of aging. But I'll tell you this, there are 70-year-olds out there who are stronger, more agile, and more capable than some 40-year-olds. Why? Because they took responsibility. They prioritized their physical health. They made movement a daily practice. They didn't surrender to comfort, and they certainly didn't surrender to excuses. And then there's nutrition. What you put into your body determines how well it functions. We live in a society that has normalized destructive eating habits. People consume processed food loaded with sugar, chemicals, and empty calories, and then wonder why they feel sluggish, why they gain weight uncontrollably, why their energy levels plummet. The fuel you provide your body matters. A high-protein diet supports muscle retention, which is critical as you age. Sufficient hydration keeps your body functioning at a high level. Essential nutrients from whole foods provide the raw materials for cellular repair and immune function, and yet so many people disregard this entirely until they're sitting in a doctor's office being told they have diabetes, heart disease, or a degenerative condition that could have been prevented. Sleep is another pillar of health that people neglect. Your body heals and regenerates while you sleep. If you treat sleep as an afterthought, if you consistently deprive yourself of quality rest, you are accelerating your decline. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to cognitive impairment, weakened immunity, and increased risk of almost every major disease. And yet people wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. They push their limits, thinking they can make up for it later. But there is no later, only consequences. The reality is that maintaining your physical health is not just about vanity or looking good. It is about staying in the game. It is about preserving your ability to engage with life fully. It is about making sure that you are not sidelined by preventable ailments, and that you do not become a person who watches life happen from the sidelines, powerless to participate. Because here's the truth. People respect and value those who remain capable. They admire those who defy the expectations of age, but they pity those who let themselves deteriorate. And pity is a dangerous thing. Pity does not breed love. It does not breed admiration. It breeds distance. People withdraw from those they pity. They visit less often. They listen less attentively. They care, but not in the way you want them to. So if you want to ensure that you are not merely surviving, but thriving past the age of 60, you must make your health your responsibility. No one else will do it for you. No one else can do it for you. And if you wait too long, if you neglect this fundamental aspect of your life, you will find yourself in a position where regret is the only thing left to hold on to, and regret is a bitter thing to carry. Start now, because the price of neglect is far greater than the cost of discipline. Money is not just about survival, it is about autonomy. It is about the ability to make choices, to dictate the terms of your own life rather than having them dictated to you. The problem is that most people do not think far enough ahead. They live in the moment, believing that things will somehow work out, that their children or the government or some undefined force will provide for them when the time comes. But reality is far less forgiving. If you do not take responsibility for your financial future, you will find yourself at the mercy of others, and that is a deeply vulnerable position to be in. Financial dependence is one of the greatest sources of suffering in old age. It strips you of dignity. It forces you into situations where you must ask for help when you would rather stand on your own. It makes you feel like a burden, and the weight of that burden is not just on your shoulders, it is on the shoulders of those around you. And whether people admit it or not, that kind of dependence breeds resentment, not immediately, not obviously, but over time, as obligations pile up and resources stretch thin. When you rely on others financially, you put yourself in a position where you are no longer the master of your own life. Decisions about where you live, what you can afford, even how people treat you, these all become contingent on the generosity and circumstances of others. And generosity, as noble as it is, has limits. People often assume that family will take care of them, that their children, whom they have raised and provided for, will naturally return the favor. But this is a dangerous assumption. Your children will have their own families, their own struggles, their own financial burdens. They may want to help, but their ability to do so will be limited. And even if they can provide for you, do you really want to put them in a position where they feel obligated to? Do you want your presence in their lives to be a source of financial strain rather than a source of joy? Love cannot always override economic reality. Good intentions do not pay the bills. And waiting for others to take care of you is not a plan, it is a gamble. Financial security is not just about having enough money to survive. It is about having the freedom to live on your own terms. It is about being able to make decisions without fear, without desperation. When you have money, you have options. If you need medical care, you can afford the best treatment instead of relying on whatever is available. If you want to live independently, you can choose where and how you live rather than being forced into a situation dictated by financial necessity. If you want to help others, to contribute to causes you believe in, to support your grandchildren without putting pressure on your own children, you can do so without hesitation. But financial security does not happen by accident. It requires foresight, discipline, and a willingness to make sacrifices in the present for the sake of the future. Many people spend their younger years accumulating debt, spending recklessly, living beyond their means because they believe they have time to fix it later. But later comes faster than you think. And the habits you develop in your 30s and 40s become the foundation of your reality in your 60s and beyond. If you do not prioritize savings, if you do not invest wisely, if you do not prepare for the unexpected, you will find yourself in a position where your choices are no longer yours to make. One of the greatest mistakes people make is underestimating how expensive life becomes as they age. Healthcare costs rise, the ability to work diminishes, the safety nets people assume will be there, pensions, government assistance, family support, are often weaker than they expect. And once you are in a financial crisis, it is much harder to get out of it than it would have been to prevent it in the first place. So what does financial independence actually look like? It means having enough saved and invested that you do not need to rely on anyone else for your basic needs. It means living below your means so that you are never caught off guard by unexpected expenses. It means making intelligent choices with your money, avoiding unnecessary debt, investing in assets that grow over time, creating multiple streams of income where possible. It means thinking long-term rather than indulging in short-term gratification that leaves you vulnerable in the years to come. It also means understanding that money is not just about accumulation, it is about management. There are people who earn a fortune and still end up broke because they never learned how to handle their finances properly. And there are people who earn modest incomes but retire comfortably because they understood how to budget, how to invest wisely, and how to live within their means. Financial independence is not just about how much you make. It is about how much you keep and how well you use it. There is also an emotional aspect to financial security that people do not talk about enough. When you are financially independent, you carry yourself differently. You do not have to beg, to rely on the goodwill of others, to feel like a burden. You maintain your self-respect. You retain the ability to contribute rather than simply consume. You are seen as someone who is in control of their life rather than someone who has let life control them. The alternative is bleak. Financial insecurity in old age is one of the most devastating experiences a person can go through. It leads to stress, to anxiety, to a sense of helplessness that eats away at a person's dignity. It forces people into situations where they must depend on others in ways that feel humiliating. It creates a dynamic where relationships become transactional, where interactions with family and friends are overshadowed by financial need. And that is not how you want to spend the last decades of your life. So the question you must ask yourself is this: are you willing to take responsibility for your financial future, or are you going to leave it up to chance? Because chance is not a strategy. Hope is not a plan. If you do not take control now, you will regret it later. And regret, especially financial regret, is a heavy burden to bear. If you are young, start preparing now. Save aggressively, invest wisely, and make choices that prioritize long-term stability over short-term comfort. If you are older, take a hard look at where you stand financially and make the changes necessary to secure your independence. It is never too late to start, but the longer you wait, the fewer options you will have. Financial independence is not a luxury. It is not something that only the wealthy can achieve. It is a necessity. It is the difference between living life on your own terms and being at the mercy of circumstances beyond your control. And if you want to ensure that you are never put in a position where you have to rely on others just to get by, then you must make financial security a priority because no one else will do it for you. The mind is the battleground of life. If you allow it to weaken, to atrophy, to become rigid and incapable of adaptation, then you are setting yourself up for decline long before your body ever begins to fail. The ability to think critically, to learn continuously, and to maintain emotional resilience is not just useful, it is absolutely essential. And yet, many people treat their intellectual and emotional well-being as an afterthought, assuming that with age comes wisdom by default. But wisdom is not something that simply arrives with time. It must be cultivated, it must be pursued with the same rigor that one would dedicate to physical health or financial stability. The greatest mistake people make is assuming that learning is something reserved for the young. They graduate from school, settle into routines, and stop actively engaging with new ideas. And over time, their cognitive abilities diminish, not because of age itself, but because they have neglected the very processes that keep the mind sharp. The brain, much like a muscle, requires exercise. If you do not challenge it, if you do not force it to adapt and grow, then it weakens. You become slower, more forgetful, less capable of engaging with complexity. And the world does not slow down to accommodate this decline. Instead, it moves forward without you, leaving you feeling disconnected, frustrated, and eventually irrelevant. The ability to think clearly is one of the most powerful tools you can possess, and yet so many people allow their minds to be dulled by distraction, by routine, by a refusal to engage with anything that challenges them. They consume information passively, scrolling endlessly through meaningless content, letting other people think for them. But passive consumption does not build intelligence. It does not strengthen critical thinking. It does not prepare you to deal with the complexities of life. If you are not actively learning, questioning, and challenging your own beliefs, then you are allowing yourself to stagnate. But intellectual resilience is only half of the equation. Emotional resilience is just as critical because life does not get easier with age. In fact, in many ways, it becomes more difficult. The losses accumulate, friends pass away, your role in society changes. You are no longer the center of activity, the one making decisions, the one people rely on. And if you are not prepared for this shift, if you have not built the emotional strength to navigate these transitions, then you will find yourself consumed by bitterness, by regret, by a sense of displacement that erodes your quality of life. Emotional resilience does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending that pain does not exist. It means developing the ability to process difficulty without being destroyed by it. It means accepting that suffering is a fundamental part of existence and choosing to respond to it in a way that is constructive rather than destructive. Many people reach a certain age and become trapped in cycles of resentment. They look back on their lives and dwell on missed opportunities, on relationships that failed, on ambitions that were never realized. And instead of using that reflection to grow, they allow it to harden them. They become bitter, cynical, convinced that the world has wronged them in some way. But bitterness is a poison that only harms the one who carries it. It drives people away, it isolates, it turns what could be years of fulfillment into years of self-inflicted misery. The key to intellectual and emotional resilience is responsibility. Responsibility for your own thoughts, responsibility for your own emotions. If you allow external circumstances to dictate the state of your mind, then you are relinquishing control over the one thing that is truly yours. No one else can maintain your mental clarity for you. No one else can ensure that you remain emotionally strong. These are tasks that only you can undertake, and they require discipline. One of the most effective ways to maintain intellectual sharpness is through reading, serious reading, not just passive consumption of surface-level information. Literature, philosophy, history, science, these are not just academic pursuits. They are tools for strengthening the mind, for understanding the world at a deeper level, for developing the ability to think in ways that are nuanced and complex. If you are not engaging with ideas that challenge you, then you are not growing. And if you are not growing, then you are declining. Writing is another powerful tool. When you write, you are forced to clarify your thoughts, to articulate your ideas in a way that is structured and coherent. Many people have vague notions about what they believe, but when pressed, they cannot explain their positions clearly. This is because they have never trained themselves to think with precision. Writing is a discipline that forces clarity, and clarity is essential for navigating life effectively. Engaging in meaningful conversations is equally important. Surround yourself with people who challenge you, who push you to think deeper, who are not simply echo chambers for your existing beliefs. Too many people seek comfort in agreement rather than growth through discourse. They avoid difficult conversations because they do not want to be uncomfortable, but discomfort is where growth happens. If you are never challenged, then you are never forced to refine your thinking, and if you never refine your thinking, then you will never reach your full intellectual potential. Emotional resilience, like intellectual resilience, must be cultivated through action. One of the most effective ways to build emotional strength is through responsibility. Take on challenges, do things that are difficult. If you avoid hardship, you become fragile. But if you face adversity head on, you become stronger. The more responsibility you take for your life, your actions, your emotions, your circumstances, the more resilient you become. And then there is the question of meaning. One of the greatest threats to emotional stability in old age is a sense of purposelessness. Many people tie their sense of worth to their careers, to their roles as parents, to their positions in society. And when those roles shift, when they retire, when their children become independent, they are left with an existential void. If you do not develop a sense of meaning that extends beyond external circumstances, then you are setting yourself up for a crisis. Meaning must be cultivated. It must be something that exists independent of status, of work, of social validation. It must be rooted in something deeper. Perhaps that meaning comes from creativity, writing, painting, music, building something that outlasts you. Perhaps it comes from mentorship, passing on knowledge, guiding others, ensuring that your experience is not wasted. Perhaps it comes from service, helping others, contributing to your community, making a tangible difference in the world. Whatever form it takes, it must be something, because without meaning, the mind deteriorates. Without meaning, emotions become erratic. Without meaning, suffering becomes unbearable. The harsh reality is that life does not slow down for you as you age. It does not become gentler. If anything, it demands even more from you. If you want to remain sharp, engaged, and emotionally strong, then you must take responsibility for cultivating those traits. No one else will do it for you. And if you allow yourself to slip into passivity, if you let your mind and emotions become weak, then you will find yourself at the mercy of forces beyond your control. And that is not a position you want to be in. You must remain a participant in life, not just an observer. You must continue to grow, to learn, to challenge yourself, because the alternative is stagnation, and stagnation is the beginning of decline. Your body is the vehicle through which you experience life. If it deteriorates prematurely, everything else, your ambitions, your relationships, your ability to think clearly and enjoy the world, begins to erode along with it. Many people assume that aging inevitably means physical decline, that weakness, frailty, and illness are just natural parts of growing older. And while some aspects of aging are unavoidable, the extent to which your body fails you is largely within your control. The difference between those who live with vitality well into old age and those who become prisoners of their own failing bodies is often a matter of discipline, habits, and the choices made decades before. Neglecting physical health is one of the most common and catastrophic mistakes people make. When you are young, your body is resilient. You can get away with poor eating habits, lack of exercise, sleep deprivation, and general disregard for your well-being. The consequences are minimal at first, but these habits accumulate over time. The body keeps score. Every bad decision compounds, just as every good decision builds a foundation for strength. And by the time you reach 60, the results of your choices are undeniable. You either have a body that enables you to live independently, to travel, to engage in activities you enjoy, or you have a body that limits you, that forces you into dependency, that makes every movement a struggle. Physical weakness is not just a medical issue, it is a philosophical and existential crisis. The weaker you become, the less control you have over your own life. When you cannot move properly, you become reliant on others. When you develop chronic illness, your world shrinks. You begin to avoid stairs, long walks, travel, social gatherings. Things that once brought joy become obstacles. Independence is replaced with fragility. And once you reach that state, reversing it is far harder than preventing it in the first place. The most effective way to ensure longevity and strength is to engage in consistent, intelligent physical activity. Strength training in particular is critical. Muscle mass naturally declines with age, but this decline is not inevitable. It is a consequence of inactivity more than aging itself. Lifting weights, engaging in bodyweight exercises, maintaining core strength, these are not just activities for athletes or the young. They are necessities for anyone who wants to preserve their autonomy. A strong body protects against injury, improves posture, increases metabolism, and ensures that everyday tasks, carrying groceries, standing up from a chair, walking upstairs, remain effortless rather than exhausting. Cardiovascular health is just as essential. A strong heart and lungs enable endurance, and endurance allows for engagement with life. If walking for 20 minutes leaves you winded, if climbing a flight of stairs feels like an insurmountable challenge, then you are in a state of decline that will only worsen if not addressed. Regular cardiovascular exercise, walking, running, swimming, cycling, keeps the heart strong, the blood vessels flexible, and the brain well oxygenated. It reduces the risk of heart disease, stroke, and cognitive decline. It is not an optional luxury, it is a biological imperative.